Hello everyone and welcome to Big Rock Moto. Thank you so much for tuning in today. I really appreciate that. I want to talk about 360 cameras. So I've been using 360 cameras really ever since they first came out. And the cool thing about 360 camera is you can put it anywhere and it captures the entire image around the camera. So the advantage is you can get some really creative shots and you don't have to worry about aiming the camera at the perfect spot. So for these reasons, these have become really popular. Now, in full disclosure, Insta360 is a current sponsor of Big Rock Moto, so I want to make that clear. So here's what they did. They actually sent me this new DJI Osmo 360 camera, and they simply said, test it out head-to-head against the Insta360 X5, their current 360 camera and the one I've been using, and see what you think of the pros and cons of each and sort of how they compare. Now, the fact that they would freely send me this camera and say, put it head-to-head with their camera, tells me that they're pretty confident in their product. Now, to be clear, I have nothing against DJI, and I've worked with them in the past, and I think they make excellent products. So I have nothing against them whatsoever. Now, I've been testing these cameras side by side, and today I'm going to give you what I think the pros and cons of each camera are. Okay, the first category for this comparison, let's talk about pricing. Honestly, the pricing is effectively the same between the two, and that makes sense. They're directly aimed at each other. There might be small price differences here and there, and the companies run different sales at different times, and you may be watching this video in the future and the pricing may have changed. But as I'm filming this in August of 2025, the pricing is very similar between the two. Now, if you use my affiliate links with Insta360, I'll put the information below. There might be a code as well, but I'll put the info below. If you shop with Insta360, I will get a small commission, which helps out. And I think you get a free accessory through the end of August, if I'm correct, but I'll put that information down below. Now, let's talk about some of the technical things with the imaging sensor, the resolution, the frame rate, the color depth, and all that. Okay, so the sensors in the cameras. The new DJI camera has a slightly larger imaging sensor than the Insta360 X5. I'll put the exact specifics of that down below here in the text. Not a very big difference, but is something worth noting. Now, on the frame rate and the resolution, they're both 8K cameras, so you can use that great 8K resolution. So when you crop the image down, you still get some really nice resolution, even at the crop size. The X5 can film at 8K at 30 frames a second, whereas the Osmo 360 can film at 8K 50 frames a second, so a little bit better on the DJI. Now, that doesn't matter to me because the truth is if I want to slow the footage down or do slow-mo footage, I want 120 frames a second probably, if not 60, but probably I want 120. So I'm going to go to a lower resolution anyway, which both cameras are very capable of doing. In terms of color, the DJI uses a 10-bit color and the Insta uses an 8-bit color. I can't tell any difference. I'm sure if you're like a super video expert person that you could tell some small difference, but I can't tell any difference between the 8-bit and the 10-bit. Okay, so let's talk about overall image quality between the X5 and the Osmo 360. Just to be honest with you, I think they're tied. Like, in some situations, maybe the DJI looks slightly better, and in some situations, maybe the Insta360 looks better. Honestly, it's probably gonna come down to your post-processing, how good you are with that, and also, do you have a clear lens? You need to have a clear lens, of course, with these cameras. They're very sensitive to any dirt or dust on these 360 lenses. In terms of low light shooting, they both work very well for that. I really couldn't give you a winner between those two. Yeah, so the overall image quality, I don't think that's a deciding factor between these two cameras. Now, this brings me to a very important point, and the main reason that I honestly think that the X5 is better for motorcycle use, motovlogging, adventure sports, outdoors, content creation than the DJI is because the X5 has user replaceable lenses, and I have one of the kits right here. So at home, you can easily replace the lenses when you scratch them, and you will scratch them and damage them. I took this camera out, brand new out of the box, this X5, and on my first ride, I crashed the Tenere 700 off-roading, and I put some scratches on the lenses. Now, if I had done that with the Osmo 360, I would have had to send this camera into DJI for lens replacement. It's not so much the cost of it, because the cost is pretty reasonable for them to do that, but it's the downtime that I wouldn't have the camera. The game-changing thing that they did with the X5 is they made the lens user replaceable at home, and to me, that is probably the most important factor in this entire comparison. Speaking of lenses and damaging your lenses, they both have lens guards available. The difference is, though, on the Insta360 you can get the premium glass lens guards, which I recommend. They have less distortion in my experience than the plastic lens guards. With DJI you can only get a plastic lens guard, and in my experience they can cause distortion. Plus, some people have had fogging issues with those plastic lens guards on the Osmo camera. Let's talk about battery life between the two. So the Insta360 technically has a larger capacity battery than the Osmo 360. However, in my testing so far, I haven't noticed any considerable difference in the battery life between the two. So the DJI seems to have really good power management, and it seems to make really good use of its little bit smaller battery. If you go the DJI route, you should know that if you use a lot of other DJI action cameras and you're going to stick with those, then this does share the battery with those, which is nice. Whereas on the X5, because of the proprietary shape of the form factor of the camera, it has a proprietary battery, but again, you get a little bit more capacity with that. All right, now another huge area we need to talk about is audio, or the microphone in the camera. Now, I'll put some video or image of this here, but the cool thing that Insta360 did with the X5 is they built in a wind guard to the microphone in the camera. So you can actually capture pretty decent audio of like the engine sound and the sound of the wind and riding along, even at higher speeds on the X5. If you try to do that with the Osmo, what's going to happen is it's going to be just really distorted audio, because it doesn't have like the wind guard integrated into the camera. So for a lot of applications, you're probably still going to want to capture audio through some other recording method, whether it's in your helmet or whatever you want to do. But I do like having this, because sometimes I just want the sound of the engine or the ride itself, and I can actually get usable audio from this, which I didn't think would be possible, but somehow they did a good enough wind guard on this camera where you can't do that with the Osmo 360. Now, another big determining factor why I honestly prefer the X5 over this is the screen size. So you can see, and I'll put some, images up here, but the screen size on the X5 is so much larger than the Osmo 360. The reason that makes a difference to me is that when I'm out there filming, I can see a better preview of my image with this much larger screen. It's like twice as big. Now, they'll tell you that this is 2.5 inches and this is 2 inches, but it seems like a much bigger difference than that. Like this has such a better usable screen size than the DJI camera for changing settings, but mostly for that image preview thing when you're trying to make sure that you're getting good shots, or for reviewing your footage. So the screen size is, to me, like a huge advantage with the Insta360. All right, next up, I want to talk about accessories between the two cameras. So when you get into these types of cameras, it's really important that you have a good selection of accessories. We've talked about some things like the lens guards and those kinds of things, but in particular, like I want to highlight this GPS preview remote with a built-in microphone. This thing is fantastic, and it works with not just the X5, but also with the Ace Pro 2, which I also use, the helmet-mounted action camera. So that's pretty cool. You can't get anything like this on the DJI. Overall, if you look at the accessories available between the two, the Insta360 has more. And it kind of makes sense because they've been doing the 360 cameras for longer than DJI. They both have good accessories, good quality, but if you look on the websites, they have much more options available with the X5. So in that way, I think that camera has the advantage. A couple more things with those accessories that you really need to know is that the great thing about this camera that I found using it is that when you put on like lens covers or different accessories like the ND filters or whatever, the camera automatically detects it and changes the setting for you. That's really good because that's something I would forget. With the DJI, you have to go in and remember to manually change the settings in the camera, otherwise you're not going to have a good image when you put different accessories on it. Also, I want to mention the ND filters. The ND filters give you that cinematic motion blur, and I'll put an example of that here, like using an action camera. I'm just starting to use it with the 360 cameras, but that's pretty cool that you can get ND filters for this, and I don't believe DJI, at least as of now, has that option. That's really good if you want to get cinematic looking stuff. So the availability of accessories, the auto detection of it, all advantage to the Insta360. The other thing I want to say is that if you use a Cardo or a Sena, like a helmet headset communicator, you can use the audio, the microphone already in your helmet from the Cardo or the Sena to record audio into this, which is pretty phenomenal. And you don't get that option with the DJI, so you're going to be putting, a whole separate microphone setup in your helmet. Let's talk about editing applications, whether you use your phone or use your computer. So they each have their own applications for the editing and the cropping of the 360 footage that you get. And really, they're similar in how they work. So I wouldn't really give you an advantage either way on that. They both work pretty well, whether you use phone or on your PC at home. And yeah, I don't really have an advantage either way on that. Okay, so real talk in terms of the conclusion between these two cameras. You can tell by now that I think that the Insta360 X5 is a better overall camera. I've detailed the reasons why. I think the four big ones for me are the user replaceable lens, the bigger screen, the better audio capture, and the better catalog of accessories. So if you're my friend and you're asking me, what 360 camera should I get for motorcycling, regardless of sponsorship or anything to do with my business, I'm honestly going to tell you it's still the Insta360 X5. I think DJI has made an excellent first attempt with this 360 camera, and they make amazing products in general. I have absolutely nothing against them, and I've worked with them in the past and used many of their products in the past. And I've given you the disclosure that this channel is currently sponsored by Insta360, but honestly, if you just break it down area by area, I think that the X5 just has too many major advantages to really recommend the DJI over this one. So I hope this video has been useful. If there's things I've missed, put that down below in the comments. I'll do my best to get back to you. I will have the links and the information below on how to order any of this stuff and get any extra accessories or discounts. That will all be below. Thank you so much for watching. Ride safe. I'll see you out there.